This is CBC Here and Now.
Blizzard conditions expected for parts of Labrador as we head through tomorrow, and then all eyes on the eastern portion of the island as we head towards the weekend.
People seem to be happy that we're there, curious. And you know, you guys have such a cool scenery, like the colorful houses and like the harbor and everything, so it makes for like some really cool shots.
The hilly streets of St. John's became the backdrop for a segment in a movie produced by Burton. I catch up with one of the filmmakers and one of the snowboarders. That story coming up on Here and Now.
We plan on, hiring 100 plus, 200 plus more in the coming years, and those people have to come from somewhere.
And in half an hour on Here and Now, politicians are talking about creating jobs, but we sit down with a tech titan about how to turn this province into Silicon Harbor. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Peter Cowan.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. We begin tonight on the campaign trail. Liberal leader Andrew Furey announced today that his party would expand access to e-health in rural and remote areas of the province if he's elected, but he was short on specifics. Here and Now's Heather Gillis is live from our newsroom with more. Heather?
Thanks, Carolyn. Well, today from Port aux Basques, Liberal leader Andrew Furey said he's going to invest in telemedicine, virtual mental health care, and pharmacy services. Of course, many people have been going to the doctor using telemedicine over the phone or through a video call since the pandemic began, and it's something that doctors say they'd like to continue, though Furey today didn't say how much money he believes that this program will save the healthcare system or how many people will actually be able to access and have better access to a doctor and other healthcare providers. Liberal leader Andrew Furey promised to invest in technology and IT to expand digital healthcare services in rural and Indigenous communities. Furey says many people have been successfully using telemedicine services since the pandemic began. He says expanding it will save money, but he can't say how much.
But we don't have the analysis done on the virtual health codes, for example, through the MCP billing to fully understand how many people have accessed it.
Furey also can't say how many more people will have access to healthcare providers like doctors as a result. He believes his promise will make appointments easier for some patients. As a surgeon himself, he says he's had patients drive 8 to 10 hours for a 10 to 15-minute appointment.
They had to take time off work, they had to find a babysitter, they had to put gas in the car and all the subsequent expenses that come with it.
But there's a hitch. Rural and remote areas struggle with good internet access, while some people can't afford it at all.
Yep, so we're going to continue to work with our federal partners. They've made a recent announcement about increasing rural broadband across the country. We're going to work with them. We're committed to rural broadband because this is an issue of public health and safety. It's also an issue for the economy.
That means Furey's promises made today won't be enacted immediately.
I mean, that takes time, but when we look in the rearview mirror, Newfoundland and Labrador has already been a leader in telemedicine before there was any such thing as e-health. So we can be a leader again.
Well, the province currently spends about $3 billion on the healthcare system as a whole, including $10 million on 2 medical transportation programs that help people travel to medical appointments.
Thank you very much. That's Here and Now's Heather Gillis reporting live from the newsroom tonight. Meanwhile, the province's Progressive Conservative Party is promising to stimulate the economy by cutting provincial taxes and fees. The leader says his plan is to reduce business payroll taxes, and that's going to create 1,000 jobs alone. Here Now's Mark Quinn reports.
PC leader Ches Crosby says it will mean a $10 million revenue loss for government over 4 years. He doesn't know exactly how many businesses will benefit from cutting the payroll tax, but Crosby expects it will result in up to 1,000 new jobs.
So what I'm talking about here is a restructuring and a rejigging of the taxation system to remove barriers to growth.
Liberal leader Andrew Furey isn't convinced it will work.
Jobs, jobs, jobs is a great line, but we'd like to say more details on the plan. We'll continue to roll out what we think is the best, most sustainable strategy for creating long-term employment in the province over the next couple of weeks.
On Twitter, Labour leader Lana Payne of Unifor has questions too. She wants to know more about how the tax cut will result in 1,000 jobs. Crosby says a Conservative government would start by reducing the tax rate on full-time employees, thus encouraging employers to hire full-time instead of part-time employees.
So it's an incentive to companies, often they're big hirers, to keep their full-time staff on the payroll and not turn them into part-time.
NDP leader Alison Coffin says it's a bad idea that won't help small businesses. She says, quote, essentially, they plan to cancel the fifth largest tax stream in government's budget in the hopes that the Loblaws of the world will create jobs instead of feeding the tax break back to their shareholders, she said. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
The NDP leader didn't have any scheduled public events today and didn't make any announcements, but she did take some time from door knocking to skate in her regular Tuesday afternoon hockey game. Other NDP candidates were campaigning in their districts.
Well, temperatures today above zero yet again for eastern portions of the island. 5 degrees in Cape Brace, 3 in St. John. Similar temperature through Terra Nova, hovering around the 0 degree mark as you head towards the west coast. And that cold air for Labrador, at least Lab West anyway. -19 was the afternoon high in Lab City tonight. Now, last night we talked about the potential for 5 to 15 centimeters for portions of the Bonavista Peninsula. That area of low pressure, that track really, like I said, depends on where it goes. It tracked way offshore than what it looked like it was going to. So we missed all of that snow, but that area of low pressure is going to move north as we head through the night tonight, and that is prompting blizzard warnings for northern portions of Labrador with blowing snow advisories in place as well. This will happen from tomorrow afternoon, or tomorrow morning rather, through Thursday morning. Snowfall amounts anywhere from 5 to 10 to as much as 20 to 30 centimeters for portions of northern Labrador. So we do have another system that we're watching. That's for Thursday night into Friday. Could potentially bring some blizzard conditions for portions of eastern Newfoundland, but I will have all those details coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, to Corner Brook now, where the jury heard Thomas Whittle claim he was not driving the snowmobile the night Justin Pollard was killed. Whittle faces impaired driving causing death charges after a snowmobile collided with a taxi van, killing Pollard in February of 2017. Here Now's Colleen Connors was in the courtroom this afternoon and has more on this development.
This is the first evidence during a 3-week trial where the jury is hearing from Whittle himself, hearing his voice. Now, he agrees that he was on the front of that snowmobile, but says he was not driving it. Now, this all came to light during a hour and 45-minute audio statement that he gave to the RCMP in Holyrood a year after the incident took place. Crown Renee Coates played that audio statement to the jury late this afternoon. Whittle says although he was on the front of the snowmobile, Pollard, who was sitting behind him, was operating the machine. Pollard's hands on the handlebars and Whittle's hands close to the snowmobile kill switch. He said to Constable John Galway over and over, "I wasn't driving. I am telling you the truth." Now, while the officers continued to ask questions, Whittle said, "I was a passenger in the front." And then he kept saying over and over, "I am not going to be held responsible for something I didn't do." Whittle said on the tape he remembered very little from that night, waking up in a pile on the bridge. The snowmobile collided with a taxi van at the entrance to Humber Valley Resort Bridge at 4 a.m. Pollard died from his injuries. Whittle faces 4 counts of impaired driving causing death. He had consumed alcohol over the exceeded limit, and there was cocaine in his system. The jury also had the opportunity to witness some surveillance footage from that area where you could see a snowmobile whizzing across the bridge. Now, the trial does continue all this week. Renee Coates says that she will finish with her witnesses tomorrow morning in the courtroom, and then that will give the opportunity for Whittle to call his 3 witnesses. Colleen Connors, CBC News, Corner Brook.
Employees at Memorial University in St. John's are returning to campus in less than 2 weeks. The campus has been pretty empty since it closed last March during the lockdown. MUN announced today that staff will return to their offices February 1st. The university spokesperson said Memorial's campuses are safe and the university is continuing to follow all the public health guidelines. Today's announcement only relates to staff and not students. Most of them are still doing courses through online learning. Well, Air Canada is adding a direct-to-Toronto flight at the Deer Lake Airport. The move comes a week after the airline cut flights to Gander, Goose Bay and St. John's. And it comes a month after Air Canada says it was eliminating the Deer Lake to Halifax flight and cutting down that Toronto flight to 4 times a week. The Regional Airport Authority says the new flight will start in February. It will fly direct to Toronto on Thursdays. So that's in addition to the Monday, Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday flights.
Well, a business owner in the town of Pooch Cove is furious with his new tax bill for the new year. Dave Snow owns Marine Park, an RV campground in the town, and says huge increases in taxes this year will hurt his business. Cease Hare reports.
Marine Park is fairly quiet this time of year, but the owner is making some noise over rising taxes.
From $10,000 a year ago, the campground business alone will go up over $78,000, not counting the RV, the propane, the self-storage, none of those things included. So it's substantial.
Snow says 2 things are at play. The taxes jumped because the Municipal Assessment Agency split his one business into 4 and determined his business is about more than just camping. And the town is now taxing him at a much higher rate. His campground rate alone goes from 14 mils to 70.
We've had some, disagreements and miscommunications with the municipality, and I don't know if this is a form of retribution or punishment.
He wonders if it's because the province sided with him when the town objected to families staying at the park year-round during the pandemic. In the end, the province was okay with that.
I won't say it's not survivable, but it's certainly punishing, and after 2.5 decades, it really feels like we're being singled out and persecuted, and fairly maliciously at that.
Snow took over the day-use picnic park from the provincial government 24 years ago. It now has 450 campsites, a propane refill station, a convenience store, self-storage, and RV sales.
During that time, the business owner made huge renovations, huge additions to the property. He has a large business there, no doubt. It's grown leaps and bounds over the last couple of years.
The mayor says council wants to work with Snow, but there's also pressure on them from mom and pop businesses in the town wondering about their taxes.
And I want to work with this business owner going forward. It's just that we have to be logical and reasonable when we're doing all our taxation, taking into consideration the smaller business owners as well, who said, how can you tax me the same as this large business owner?
Snow says he's appealing the town's mill rates and the assessment by the Municipal Assessment Agency. Cease Hare, CBC News, St. John's.
It's a live look out there tonight. Not a whole lot happening. We might see a few flurries, but it is looking like Thursday night this time will look significantly different. I will give you those details coming up.
Time for a look at the weather forecast. And Ashley, I know a lot of people are looking ahead to Thursday, wondering how bad it's going to be, how much snow could be coming. So how bad do you think it's going to be?
Yeah, so early indications pointing at 30, maybe even as much as 50 centimeters of snow for portions of eastern Newfoundland.
So it could be a big one.
It could be a big one for sure, but we do have a few more days to get through first. So let's talk about that, and then we'll get into some of those details. We're looking at temperatures right now sitting around 1 degree for St. John's, and then temperatures have dropped for the west coast down to -5 for Corner Brook, -12 in Happy Valley Goose Bay. Those temperatures still quite mild for coastal areas of Labrador. Cartwright, you're currently sitting at -1, Lab City -23. Factor in that wind chill, it's feeling more like -35 and a little bit of a wind chill as well down through the island portion of, or rather through Newfoundland. Taking a look at the current satellite and radar, that area of low pressure well offshore right now, but that is what's headed towards Labrador as we head through the night tonight. Zoom in a little bit, we can see some onshore flurries happening along the west coast, and then a few flurries and light snow happening for the northern portion of the Avalon as well. That's generally the story as we head through tonight, with that lingering onshore flurry and light snow activity happening along the west coast. The potential for some flurries will stick around for the Avalon as well, and then down along the southern portion of the Burin Peninsula as well as the Avalon, we'll see potentially some snow or light snow with some of these bands as we head into the early morning hours. There's that area of low pressure I was talking about a little bit earlier. That snow will spread towards, it actually retrogrades, which means it's moving from west to, from east to west for coastal areas of Labrador, and then you're going to see blizzard conditions through most of the day with blowing snow advisories down through the southeastern portion of Labrador. Otherwise, not a whole lot happening Wednesday, tomorrow for most of the island. You're just looking again at that onshore flurry activity potential. Could see as much as 5, maybe 15 centimeters in some of those higher elevations along the west coast. That snow will eventually taper off for coastal areas of Labrador, so you're going to see an improvement in the weather through the day on Thursday. Temperatures tonight, cold for Lab City, down to -28. Your wind chills nearing -40 overnight tonight. Otherwise, temperatures will dip into the -teens through central Labrador. Minus single digits the story for most of the island, again with some flurries or light snow, and the winds generally out of the west, 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. As we head through tomorrow afternoon, temperatures will be chilly along the west coast into the mid- single digits. Some sunshine, periods of sun and cloud for central and even eastern areas of the island tomorrow. Those winds will be gusty though, westerlies anywhere from 20 to as much as 50 kilometers per hour. And then we're looking at the snow again continuing for Lab City, or rather coastal Labrador. Then we turn attention to Thursday. It's looking like the snow at this point is going to start into the afternoon for eastern areas, certainly the Avalon, and then towards the Burin Peninsula as well. The heaviest snow will fall into the evening hours and then spread towards the northeast and then even the northern portion of the northern peninsula as we head into Thursday night. By Friday afternoon, that should taper off and the wind should ease as well. And then that's going to head towards, again, Labrador and continue to see that snow for the northern peninsula. So here's the early indications for the forecast right now. We're looking at 30 to 50 centimeters. This is a range of 30 to 50 centimeters for the Avalon. As we get a little bit closer, I'll probably refine this forecast. As we head towards the Bonavista Peninsula, Clarenville area, 20 to 30 centimeters, and then significantly less. There's a sharp gradient in that snowfall. Now, Northern Peninsula, you're going to see snow as well, but this will happen Friday into Saturday, so I'll have more details on that forecast coming up. Here's a little bit of some details. Heaviest snow Thursday evening and overnight with some blizzard conditions possible because we are going to see some gusty winds with this one. 70 to as much as 80 or even 90 kilometers per hour winds expected. So with that heavy snow, expect blizzard conditions. And then based on the current guidance, like I said, it looks like the snow should taper off sometime Friday afternoonish or around lunchtime. Temperatures will be below zero for most of the day as well, -2 in St. John's and then -5 towards Gander. Similar temperatures pretty much across the board. And then you're looking at minus teens, the story for Labrador on Thursday. As we head into Friday, the temperature will hover around the 0 degree mark, and then not moving much for the rest of the island. But again, that snow will become heavy for the northern peninsula and then southeastern portions of Labrador again on Friday. After that, we're looking at temperatures above zero for the weekend into Saturday. The potential for some sunshine, but overall the flurries will continue. And that's because that low is going to stick around for a while. And then for both central and western Newfoundland, you're looking at temperatures near or just below zero for the weekend. Likely going to see some sunshine in the mix through central. Little bit of disagreement on that, but the flurries and light snow will continue along the west coast as that area of low pressure sticks around. And then look at your temperatures for eastern Labrador, back up to the minus or hovering near the 0 degree mark or just below for eastern Labrador, and then for Lab West back into those minus teens for the weekend. I wanted to share this photo. This kind of looked like spring for the last little bit in Rigolet. That will look very different through the next week or so. Kellyanne Blake shared that one with us. And if you have any weather photos that you'd like to share with us, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Beautiful. Thanks, Ashley. Well, this time last year, downtown St. John's was filled with snow and professional snowboarders. Crews traveled from across North America to film here, and that was before getting buried by Snowmageddon. Now, one of the movies, Burton's One World, hits streaming services in November, and since this week marks the anniversary of that big storm, Here and Now's Jeremy Eaton caught up with some of the Burton team for a look back at that trip.
It's been a year since Snowmageddon, and the streets of St. John's look a lot different than they did in 2020. But while the city was on lockdown, some snow-loving snowboarders took to the streets, filming a segment for a movie produced by one of the biggest snowboarding companies in the world. For Danish pro snowboarder Maria Thompson, her trip to St. John's was her first with Burton.
It wasn't really a place that was on my radar for snowboarding at all in the first place. A little skeptical. But at the same time, I was pretty excited too because I love going new places and I had never been there before.
Her skepticism disappeared soon after landing.
We were super productive and people seemed to be happy that we were there, curious. And you know, you guys have such a cool scenery, like the colorful houses and like the harbor and everything. So it makes for like some really cool shots.
Oh my God. Even the Burton crew was a little taken aback by Snowmageddon.
Wild, unreal. I didn't really understand how much snow there was coming until I went outside the door.
Photographer Blotto Gray recalls the aftermath of the storm. Armed with shovels, the Burton crew helped dig out the street.
It was our pleasure to help the neighborhood out. I think it's just your duty. When there's a situation like that, you got to help your fellow person.
The pictures will last a lifetime. So too will the memories made off the boards. Shoveling snow is a big part of snowboarding. Building ramps, landings, clearing rails.
It was just really good to help the neighborhood out and help the city out and kind of show people, you know, shoveling techniques and that, hey, we're visiting here, but we're still down to be a part of this community and respect what everybody has going on here.
Shots of Snowmageddon made it into the Burton film, but not as much as you'd think. Apparently there is a thing as too much snow.
Us riding through the streets, and it was really fun. It was kind of like being a kid at a playground. For the movie, it was kind of hard to get any of like our bigger shots because everything was buried.
Thompson and Blotto say that they both like to come back, but until then, they have lots of recorded memories of a trip they won't soon forget. Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
We need a pipeline, not only of people to work within these businesses, but I think probably more importantly, a pipeline of people who are going to take a chance and start an entrepreneurial venture.
We continue our series tonight, Beyond 2020. The founder of Verifin tells us how this province could transform itself into a tech hub. Welcome back to Here and Now. How do you create more jobs in this province? It's going to be a big topic this year, one we're tackling in our series Beyond 2020 tonight. Now, it's not just the politicians in the election campaign who are talking about it.
Very, very exciting day.
Well, unlike most businesses, 2020 was a great year for Verifin. NASDAQ paid more than $3 billion for the Newfoundland and Labrador company that helps banks track illegal activity. The plan is to keep jobs here, but what will it take to grow the tech sector beyond one big success story? Brendan Brothers did it once. We sit down with the co-founder of Verifin to find out how to repeat that success. Brendan Brothers, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
How hard a decision was it for you to decide to sell off your baby?
It certainly wasn't a decision taken lightly, that's for sure. I think from our perspective, we've been presented with offers like this over the years. And even NASDAQ, I think, came knocking at the door earlier this year, and our board was kind of like, the business is not for sale. But when they came back in the fall, I think not only with a compelling offer, but I think a compelling story about how the two businesses could come together, that was a change. That was something that was different than what we had been used to hearing. And I think as part of that conversation, I think we got a lot more comfortable in the fact that, you know, there needed to be a home somewhere for Verifin along the way, and NASDAQ is a great home for this business. I think culturally aligned, you know, from a values perspective, they have the same vision in terms of fighting financial crime. You know, most people don't know that that's a significant portion of what they do. Everybody just knows the listing service, but it's a great home, and I think that's what made us most excited about this.
So you started Verifin 18 years ago. Where do you see the company 18 years from now?
Well, I mean, our long-term vision is to create the world's most effective crime-fighting network. It's something that we've believed since the day we started this business. And that's a long-term vision which probably is 25, 30 years from now, right? I mean, it's supposed to be this kind of thing that you shoot for, but you might never ever get to. And I think that's where we'll be, I think, 18 years from now.
We're seeing a lot of companies deciding that a large part of their workforce can work from home. We're seeing tech companies say, you know what? I no longer need to hire the people that are right around me. I can hire the best talent from anywhere in the world. Do you see Verifin going that way, where you no longer have to live in St. John's or Halifax in order to work for your company? You could be in Europe and you just decide to, you know, spend most of the time on Zoom calls and...
This year is an interesting experiment to see if that works. I mean, prior to 2020, I mean, we've had our main office here in St. John's, obviously, but we've got a fairly significant presence in Toronto as well. And then we have employees basically scattered across not only Newfoundland, but also across Canada and across the US. So we've had remote employees working with the business for quite some time, going back probably at least 10 years. So I think what we've learned this year is how to engage and work together regardless of where you are. And I think the big question that we probably have going into 2021 is, what do people's behaviors look like when we all have a vaccine and when we all have the ability to congregate back in large spaces? The way that we've been thinking about it is, you know, most people will generally say that they're most productive, you know, at home right now because they can focus on their work, they can get their things done and so on. But we're also concerned about what we might accidentally be missing by everybody working within their own homes as well, right? We talk a lot about accidental interactions that you have with people at the office and just the osmosis that you can get by being around people. So for us, it's actually making us think probably differently about how we structure not only, you know, how people work within the office. Maybe it's not so much about individual working anymore, but it's more about teams working together. And then tie that together with the fact that with Zoom and, you know, all these remote presence tools, that you can truly have people anywhere. So I think it'll be interesting to see how we transition out of the pandemic and what that means to work. But this has been a great experiment to certainly prove that you can work from anywhere, and you can, I think as long as you have an interesting problem to work on, you can be motivated regardless of where you are.
I guess, though, from the provincial perspective, you know, the jobs at Verifin are good, high-paying jobs. The province wants those people here. They want them paying taxes here. Yep. They want to be able to build an ecosystem here. So does this whole work-from-home idea threaten that idea that, you know, we can try and bring these people into St. John's and build up this industry here?
I don't think necessarily. I'm actually excited about the number of people that we have working across the province, right? If you think about, we have people that are working, you know, both on the east coast of the province, the west coast of the province. So, you know, that idea that you even have to be in St. John's, I don't think is necessarily true anymore. But I think the one thing that comes out of a deal like the NASDAQ Verafin partnership here is that I think it creates some fuel in the ecosystem which has already been bubbling here for quite some time, right? You need, I think, a story like this to be able to set an example for other businesses that are going to start here, that are going to start to thrive here, that are going to come out of, you know, all the incubators that we have and things like that. So I'm actually excited about what this can do and lead as an example for the other companies that are here and are being successful today.
Well, stay with us. We're going to talk about what the future of the tech industry in Newfoundland and Labrador might look like. That's coming up on Here and Now. Welcome back to Here and Now. We're talking with Brendan Brothers, one of the founders of Verafin. Your company has been held up as a great example of how a company can start small in this province and become a multi-billion-dollar success story. Is this a unicorn? Is this a once-in-a-generation opportunity? Or do you think there can be other little Verafins out there?
Oh, absolutely. I have no doubt. The key thing that we were able to do from here, I think, was be able to create a process that has allowed us to grow our business, right? That ecosystem today is much different than when we started in 2003, and I think actually that gives a lot of hope to anybody who's out there thinking about starting a business or starting a technology company today. I think this is the first of many. There's lots of great examples of businesses in the city and in the province that are doing things special from a technology perspective.
There are so many other places that are way better established than we are. If you think of like Southern Ontario, University of Waterloo, Google, of course Silicon Valley is always held up as kind of the big tech mecca. So what's the value equation of why a company should come here, should start here, should grow here?
Well, it's first of all, we've got a great university and we've got a great educational system here. I think, we can put more gas on those fires, obviously. But I think the thing that we've always been missing that we have now is that we have an actual local ecosystem that's been growing over the past several years. And we need that in order to be able to continue to provide examples and continue to be able to provide fuel to that fire. So where we might not have had that 18 years ago when we were starting now, there's this group of companies, right? You'll see them, Colab, Misa, all these great examples of companies that are doing interesting things, building great products and services. And it's by everybody starting and being successful that we start to create this momentum. And I think, this deal that we have with NASDAQ, I think, certainly pushes that along.
One of the challenges, of course, is a lack of talent. We've heard it from all the tech companies that, just trying to hire the skilled people, the programmers, the people they need. So what do we need to be doing in order to solve that problem?
Well, start early is the key. I mean, before COVID, I would spend time going into high schools talking about technology and showing Verafin as an example of something that could be achieved from a technology perspective. Increasing the capabilities and the capacity, I think, within the university and the college is another thing that we've been strongly trying to lobby for. If you look at the hiring plans that we've had over the past few years, and even what we've talked about and had NASDAQ commit to for the next several years, Verafin alone, we've added 100 plus people for the past several years, and we plan on hiring 100 plus, 200 plus more in the coming years. And those people have to come from somewhere. So we need to think, I think, very holistically, and I'm excited about kind of the way that this deal can kind of incent people to think more along these lines. That we need a pipeline, not only of people to work within these businesses, but I think probably more importantly, a pipeline of people who are going to take a chance and start an entrepreneurial venture and actually, jump in and try and create something. But that has to start early.
A decade ago, the message was become pipe fitters, become industrial electricians. We had all these mega projects on the go. Now we've got a lot of unemployed tradespeople who thought this was their golden ticket. Isn't there a risk that if we start telling everyone, hey, high-tech programming, this is the way to go, that the industry could end up 10 years from now in the same way the oil and gas industry is now?
Well, the benefit of software is that you're only limited by what you can think, right? And if you think about, our solution, trying to stop financial crime in financial institutions, right? There was no basis for that here before we started. You look at the other companies that are trying to solve interesting problems right now from a software perspective here. It's not something where you're tied to a natural resource or you're tied to a place. You're really only limited by what you can actually think and imagine and try and find a problem to solve. So I think you can almost think about it, it's a very horizontal skill set, right? I mean, if you look at the number of people that are employed in technology in the province, a significant portion of them are within technology businesses like ourselves, but technology people are also required across every other business as well. So it is a growing sector, and I think there's something special that we've started to create here, and I think it is a growth industry for the province for the long term.
Can it replace oil and gas?
I'm the wrong kind of engineer to ask that question too. But I think, as we see the trajectory of the number of businesses that are starting here and the number of hires that are starting here, and I think now that we have, through this deal, we have an internationally recognized, well-known name brand that's investing in Newfoundland and Labrador through NASDAQ. I think there's exciting things to happen, certainly, in this industry.
This deal is going to financially make you fairly well off. Do you plan to start investing? You're going to be with this company at least for the next couple of years, but do you see yourself investing in other companies, going out, starting a new company when it's time to move on?
Well, like you said, the focus for the next several years is continuing to make Verafin successful. And I mean, Jamie, Ray, myself, we've always talked about the idea of giving back, whether it's to the university, whether it's to other entrepreneurial people here within the city. So I think there's lots of opportunity for that in the future. I think as long as we're still having fun and we're excited about what we're doing within Verafin, I think we'll continue to focus on that. But I think broadly, this is a great opportunity to be able to create more success here and to be able to incent more people to come into this. At the end of the day, it's a numbers game, right? I mean, Verifin was one of a number of businesses that started kind of in our cohort when I graduated, and we were able to create something really special. And as long as we continue to invest, and as long as we continue to create the structures where people can try, succeed, and or fail, and try again, then we will be successful at the end of the day.
Well, thank you very much for speaking with me.
Thanks for having me.
Federal officials say Pfizer won't be shipping any doses of its vaccine to Canada next week. Ottawa had already acknowledged there would be a temporary reduction in shipments from the European facility. The Prime Minister says delays were expected.
We took extra care to sign more contracts with more potential vaccine makers than most of our allies, and indeed have secured more doses per person than any other country because we knew there would be challenges. But even with the announced delays by Pfizer, we are confident we're remaining on track to receive all the promised doses we had signed for by the end of Q1.
Now, the Prime Minister says the country is still on track to vaccinate every Canadian who wants a shot by September of this year. Well, Trudeau is taking the Keystone Project to the highest levels of the U.S. government. There are reports incoming President Joe Biden plans to cancel the U.S. permit for the project as one of his first acts in office. The Prime Minister spoke about that today.
I have been very clear over the past 7 years that I support the Keystone XL project. We have made that case, including in front of a room filled with Democrats 7 years ago in Washington, D.C., before I became Prime Minister. We have highlighted, including in a direct conversation I had with President-elect Biden a number of weeks ago, that Canada has, in the intervening few years, become a global leader on the fight against climate change and moving forward on transforming our economy in positive ways to reduce carbon emissions, and that Keystone XL continues to be an important project for us.
Well, this is the final full day of the Donald Trump presidency as the U.S. prepares to usher in Joe Biden as leader tomorrow. Preparations are underway in Washington for the inauguration, along with heavy security. Thousands of National Guard members have been brought in for additional support. Donald Trump won't be attending. He spent his final day at the White House with no public events. And 12 National Guard members have been removed from the presidential inauguration security. Officials say there have been no specific threats against President-elect Joe Biden. FBI has been screening people for ties with right-wing militia groups or those who have posted extremist views online.
And that were identified by the FBI, and I can't speak to the level of vetting that they do, but I know it's they said it's a standard they do for all inaugurations for participants. With the other two, they're separate from those 10 for a total of 12. One was identified by the chain of command, and another one was identified through anonymous reporting.
We're not just looking for ties to one particular threat stream. We're looking for any indication that an individual should not be included in the inaugural events.
Well, it's estimated that 621,000 Canadians play in an organized hockey league. With the pandemic pummeling organized sports across the country, one of the few leagues still operating is right here in this province. Some health officials on the mainland are warning of the dangers of playing sports inside. Terrence McKenna has this look at why COVID-19 loves a local hockey rink.
Hockey's pretty big here, and just being a part of that and the whole hockey culture, you know, it's a huge part of who I am.
Duan Street was a longtime figure skater who converted to hockey 5 years ago and is now devoted to the game, even in the time of COVID.
Latest update, we're down to 5 active cases, and you know, I mean, we see 3,000, 2,000 cases a day in other places, and that just kind of drives home how fortunate we are to actually be able to come out to the rink on Sunday night and play a game of hockey.
One of the early warnings about the COVID danger of indoor hockey came with an amateur game in Tampa Bay, Florida last June. The game became the subject of a morbidity and mortality weekly report by the Atlanta Centers for Disease Control, because one asymptomatic infected player passed on the disease to 13 of the 22 other players on the ice with him, including 5 who showed no symptoms, and to 1 rink attendant. 7 northeastern states banned hockey for November and December. In Ottawa, a single hockey practice in December led to 89 infections. In Saskatchewan, there were 20 outbreaks linked to arenas. And there was a famous case where a BC team traveled to Alberta and brought the infection back to their families and co-workers.
I can tell you that it was several dozen families that were affected, several businesses that were affected, long-term care that was affected.
Way back in March,
the widespread hockey COVID outbreaks are no surprise to Jeffrey Siegel, a professor of civil engineering at the University of Toronto and an expert on air quality and ventilation.
The big problem with arenas is that there's a bunch of additional risk factors. So number one is that, you know, people are working hard, both inhaling and exhaling, producing more respiratory droplets, being exposed to more respiratory droplets. Number two is you're playing on ice. Ice, because it's cold, is going to lead to the air near it being more dense and less likely to rise up. So what you end up with is a layer of pollutants being trapped near the ice surface. And that layer of pollutants, you know, includes the things being breathed out by people on the ice, like those respiratory droplets.
There have been numerous studies of ventilation and airflow in hockey arenas in the last 20 years, and that is mostly because of the Zamboni machines that clean and resurface the ice between games and between periods. Older Zambonis like this have internal combustion engines that emit exhaust, polluting the arena air breathed in by players and fans. The studies found that the polluted air tended to remain quite close to the ice surface, even when there was ventilation designed to blow contaminated air out of the building. The air near the ice is trapped by the plexiglass barriers above the hockey boards.
This is an air quality monitor.
Air quality monitors measuring parts per million of carbon dioxide and other pollutants are used to check ventilation at ice level.
We can apply some of that to what we're now worried about with COVID. And that's where we have a potentially infected player on the ice, and the pollutants, you know, potentially get trapped near the ice surface. And even more respiratory aerosols being produced because people are working hard because they're doing this physical activity. And then you combine that with, you know, these higher concentrations near the surfaces, people breathing deeply because they're working hard too, and you can end up potentially with some quite high exposures.
When it comes to COVID transmission in hockey, there are additional risk factors beyond the game being played on the ice. Between shifts, the players are catching their breath on the benches, often coughing and spitting. And there is also close proximity in dressing rooms.
The hockey we're playing is not body contact, but you're still going in the corners, you know, you are still in contact. So we do think about stuff like that, and of course when you're on the bench, definitely. One of the rules at one of my skates is nobody's allowed to spit, and you know, hockey players, we're all guilty of it. So just stuff like that, you know, it's a little bit, some stuff you just have to keep in the back of your mind.
Given the dangers of contracting COVID while playing hockey, you might wonder why there have not been more outbreaks connected to the National Hockey League. First off, there are the arenas themselves.
NHL arenas are a very different beast than a recreational arena. The amount of money that goes into them is very different, obviously. So I'm sure they have better ventilation. I'm sure they have a lot more protection for the players.
Away we go, Sidney Crosby and Sean Couturier.
The NHL also had strict bubble regulations to protect players, designed in part by infectious disease expert Dr. Isaac Bogosh.
What you saw at the end of the day were, I think, very tight protocols that took a lot of buy-in and were adhered to by everyone, not just the players, but all the other personnel in the bubble. And coupling that with a bubble approach and rigorous testing, plus adherence to these tight protocols, and that made for a very successful remainder of the NHL season and playoffs. And they did so without having any positive cases.
We do understand the risk, and we're fortunate that our team is a close circle of friends. So that's pretty much been our 20-person bubble now since everything has opened up.
So I'm sure people are thinking, okay, so what do we do? How do we get back to playing hockey? People love to play hockey.
I think it's going to come down a lot to the individual and the choices. So if someone lives in a household with a vulnerable family member, maybe someone who's older or someone who's got, a respiratory condition that makes them more sensitive to COVID, that might be a good time to say, yeah, maybe I shouldn't play hockey this season.
Minor hockey is still being played in Newfoundland, Labrador, and PEI, but for the moment is pretty much banned in the rest of the country. Terrence McKenna, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, if you've been watching the show this week, you'll know that we're fans of the TikTok sea shanty craze happening right now.
It's a little bit of joy in the middle of this pandemic. We've been sharing some of the videos on this show. Last night we had Alan Doyle who joined in. Makes sense. The whole social media trend was based off of his original song.
Yeah, like over 1 million people watched a UK artist sing Doyle's song. And tonight we go local. Newman Sound joins in.
This was a ship that put to sea. The name of the ship was a bully of tea. The winds blew up her bow, up down below my bully boys blow. Soon may the weathermen come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. She had not been 2 weeks from shore, and down on her a right whale bore. The captain called all hands and swore he'd take that whale in tow. Soon may the weathermen come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go.
Nice.
Gotta say, Peter, one of those people looks pretty familiar.
You know what I was doing last night?
But we can still recognize you.
Yes, no, I was one of the Newman Sound men's choir members there that was singing along, and I couldn't stay on the sidelines and watch everyone have so much fun with this TikTok craze. I had to get involved as well. So yeah, and apparently it's been, people have been enjoying it. More than 40,000 people have now viewed the video on TikTok, getting lots of great comments from around the world. So yeah, I think, Newfoundland and Labrador, we gotta stake our claim here on sea shanty TikTok. We do a pretty mean sea shanty, so.
For sure, it looked great. And yeah, and big storm coming on Thursday. And Ashley, you'll have more on that tomorrow, more details.
100%.
Thanks for watching. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.